I hope you're having a wonderful day. I would like to have a quick chat about launching our books. For me, my experiences publishing books over the last 15 years has been has basically fallen into three categories. The successful, and then there's the books that were completed without intent to launch, and the books that I failed to launch correctly. Before we get too deep into it, I looked up some statistics on this. The numbers are kind of shocking. The reality for the vast majority of people is that a initial book launch is not going to be your magnum opus. It's going to take time and a lot of work. Some of these statistics might blow your mind as far as averages go. Between 600,000 and 1 million books are published every year. For a debut author, the realities can be stark. 8% of authors write at least one full book before their first debut hits. The average number of books written before your first successful debut is 3.24 books. The average age of a debuting novelist is 36. For young adult authors, it takes 70% of them more than 4 years to publish their debut book. In order for an author to reach the $100,000 a year threshold, 48% need to constantly grind and produce work for 3 to 5 years before they reach that point. 32% take 5 to 10 years, and 7% take more than 10 years to get to the 100,000 mark. Do not expect to be the first one out the gate. Making $100,000 with your debut, we probably need to mitigate those expectations. When we are producing our books, 67% of all sales are related to our back catalog, meaning books we've published before. In 2021, bestsellers accounted for 1% of the books out. Of those 1% of books that touch the bestseller category, those 1% of books drove 80% of the revenue. That means 99% of the remaining books made 20% of the revenue. That's a steep cliff. During the general process of a book launch in the author community, only 22% of authors described it as a positive experience. Nearly half of authors who had book launches had to organize them themselves. And then there's the unfortunate situation where people are picked up by publishers and then dropped with no explanation. I didn't go down the traditional publishing route. I self-published, other reasons I've discussed before. As far as marketing and promotion goes, apparently BookBub is a fantastic way to boost your launch. Authors saw their Amazon ranking improve from 11,600 to 4,100 the day after a BookBub newsletter feature, which is kind of cool. That's something to think about. I have not considered that. The emerging trends listed are audiobooks are growing. It's estimated to be a $1.4 billion industry in 2021. Ebook revenues have slightly increased, while the digital audio format is up 6.1%. It's about 1% for ebooks over the year, and it's about 6% for audiobooks. I'm an audiobook guy, so a little bit prejudiced there for me. Social media platforms like TikTok have created a phenomenon called BookTok, where users create viral content around their book to boost sales. Self-publishing continues to grow as a viable alternative, with authors like E.L. James and Andy Weir finding their success through this route. So those are some interesting statistics I pulled up. Personal experience while publishing and launching books. It's been a mixed bag. While I have not pursued sitting in a bookstore, sitting in a Comic-Con with a table and meeting 10,000 people, I have done that kind of interaction in the past with prior business. I didn't do very well at it. I'm too ugly for it, so nobody wants to talk to me. But when we were doing the launch, the most effective launches I had were actually my first. Both Honor of the Fallen, that's this one here, and Red Blood Debts, that's this one here. Both of those two books wound up in the science fiction top 20, top 30, which was really cool. When you touch that bestseller category with your book, it really helps. That was a little while ago, and I had a large group of science fiction fans around me at the time. So when I mentioned that I was writing a science fiction book, a large number of friends went out and purchased the book. Amazon seems to have changed the system. I had a spike in friends in 2010, 2011 who had purchased my book over a span of a few days. That spike continued and propelled me onto the top list. Once you're on the top list, it's much easier to be found by people browsing for books. They may not have seen you before. They're looking for a new book. They find you because you're on the bestseller list, because they're starting at number one, working their way down, looking for stuff they haven't seen before. When you make it into those top lists, that's a pretty important indicator. Amazon has changed from the velocity of buys to more of an average number of buys per day. If you create a spike in sales like I did back in the day, well forward, Amazon seems to have averaged that out. If you have a spike of 10 sales, it might only register as a rolling average over the last so many days, and then you might have 1, 1, 1, 1. And that repetition tails off effectively so that an author's 2 books per day from their site, as opposed to your averaged out spike. That author who's moving 2 books per day as opposed to your 1 is going to see more activity and more boost from Amazon because they're actually selling 2 per day. That was in response to the flurry of VAs and people renting reviews for their books, which is a violation of Amazon policy. It's cheating. It's putting your thumb on the scale. Don't do it. Amazon's really good at tracking it down, so you waste your money and you'll contaminate your audience list, which is super important. The other books that I deliberately did not do launches for were books that are designed for a specific business case purpose. Decadent Daylight and Selling Your Home were related to helping either my business or someone else's business demonstrate credibility with customers. It was extremely profitable once the book was in place. I have written something like 30 books, and I've got like 24 of them currently open and active and published at some place in the constellation of works on Amazon. Most of them, I was either lazy or I didn't understand what I was doing. Early on, I didn't understand what I was doing. Book 3, Wrath and Retribution for the Guardsman, right here, that book, when I launched it, I did not understand how I had the success with the first 2. The first 2 went into place quickly because I had a bunch of science fiction fans who were in my immediate group who I talked to every day. I transitioned out of that group and I started leaving that group because other stuff to do with life. Because I didn't have that group of science fiction fans who I was corresponding with every day to buy that book and boost the book sales, my natural correspondence with people in the genre trailed off. Fewer people found the book, fewer people bought the book. We didn't get the boost in sales. Now, other books that I've released, I got lazy. I didn't post them because I was working, I was doing other stuff at the time. The major downfall for both the Guardsman 3 and the other books was that I never effectively spoke to an audience. That's why I'm so fanatically virulent about making sure that the foundations are in place this time. I am obsessive compulsive over that stuff. I am writing email sequences for every single list, every single genre, every single pen name, so that as friends, family, fans find the series of books, hopefully we can continue to correspond with people who are interested in the books, interested in the pen name, interested in the genre, and we can introduce people to the next book. One of the statistics we covered was that most authors take more than 4 years to make any money. 48% take 3 to 5 years. 32% take 5 to 10 years. Almost 80% of people who publish their books take between 4 and 9 years. This is the people who actually reach the $100,000 a year category. When you add in that extra 7%, 87% take more than 3 years. That means that less than 15% of writers hit between their first day, like the day one instant success for whatever reason, less than 15% make that money in 2 years, 11 months or less. That's a pretty steep cliff right there. There is a chance. And I know that people like to play the lottery. So, that in mind, back to launching our books. It's super important that we pay attention to what we have done. The lessons learned from our book launches are really important. When we are launching our book, we need to pay attention to what worked and what didn't. In my case, having my conversations with my friends, my science fiction friends group, created an audience that ported over to success on Amazon. Later, when I was tossing books into the void with no email list and no friends because I'm ugly and I'm a loser, nobody likes me, whatever. So as I was tossing books into the void and I was not introducing them to a friend's, family's, fans list, those books fell into the void and disappeared. They're still out there. You can find them. Sign up for the email list. Those books exist, but they're not going to be supported. They're not going to be boosted by the machine. The boosting from the machine happens in the first 30 days, and then the 60 days, and then trails off after that. That's all the help you're going to get from the Amazon machine. It's going to show you as a new release for a little while, and during that process, it's going to tie in related works. And you might get lucky, you might get unlucky based upon who is publishing side by side with you. Because the also bought category is sticky for a few days. While your book is being boosted as a new release, you are being related to other types of books. That's how you form the also bought list. You have a residual that you are picking up from the success of that other author's book. The author who followed you in publishing, that you are appended to their also bought list, helps pull you and elevate you in your remaining 30 to 90 days. That also bought list, you have no control over. You can, however, work several aspects of your publishing that you control. So from a lessons learned perspective, the places we need to focus on is cover. Never judge a book by the cover. Not true. Your cover needs to be perfect. Your cover needs to engage. It needs to stand out. It needs to have contrast. It needs to tell the story before people get into it. And you need to be on schedule for your genre. If you are writing a space opera with military science fiction that is sending space trips through space, and you put a cover on it that's a semi-naked man with his chest hanging out, you are making a cover for the wrong genre. If you want to write space romancy stuff, do it. But you're not going to be putting that kind of cover on a military science fiction book. People who read military science fiction expect mech suits, expect space fighters, expect star fields with giant spaceships. That's what's expected in your cover for your industry. You need to look at the popular books in that genre to figure out what kind of cover you need to be producing. Your content needs to be on point. If you write a crappy book and you get panned in reviews because it's terrible, it's time to go rethink our editing process. The third piece that's going to drag us kicking and screaming into the realm of success is how many people we can consistently refer from our page, from our group, from our outside efforts into our work. The reason that's so important is because cover, content, audience. Cover is where you're going to be getting your first impression. A good cover is going to produce a better click-in rate. When you are in your initial phase, your launch phase on the Amazon machine, it's going to calculate what percentage of people click through your cover onto the book. Click-through rate is the first determinant to your success, which is why cover needs to be your number one priority. Number two, your content. Content drives reviews. If you have horrible reviews, people might like your cover, but if your reviews are terrible, everybody's going to skip you. Because if you've got a 2-star book because you can't spell that's a bad day. We need to have conversations about how to edit at that point. Finally, the third piece, it's third because you have to make your first impression, you have to maintain quality of work. After that, moving people from your site, from your social media, from your friends group costs time and money. Time equaling money, they're the same thing. When you pay for people to click onto your ads, be it on Amazon or be it on the wider web, onto your site, email list, into your work. When you pay for that in both your time and money, the rules still apply. If you are paying to move people from the big internet to the big Amazon, and they get there and your book looks like a soup sandwich and they don't buy it, that is not going to help you. You have wasted your money. Unfortunately, the lessons learned from doing book launches, I can't speak to the whole setting up the table at the Comic-Con thing. I have done that for home shows and stuff like that. I never had success with it. Not in the home shows. That was literally our most expensive lead. The days that we went into home shows and we got the little cards and we called people, we had 50% drop-offs in our response rates because we were effectively factoring a zero in. Paying to set up a table at a Comic-Con or in a bookstore or on a sidewalk or wherever, that kind of promotion, it's interruption marketing where the guy is walking up to your door during dinner time and knocking on your door trying to sell you ant farms or pesticides or whatever they're trying to sell. When you're doing interruption marketing, somebody's off trying to buy something in the store. Hey, buy my book. You're just annoying. They may or may not be interested in your product. Got to be careful with that, especially if you're paying for the floor space. Because if you have to pay to set up a table at some show somewhere, you can quickly end up upside down. If you pay to put your books in front of you and then you pay for the table space and then you pay with your time, what is your time worth? How much do you get paid sitting at your job? How much do you calculate your time worth when you're writing your book? When you calculate the cost of that weekend, buying the books that you may or may not sell, buying the table, buying the promotional stuff, spending your time, you're talking a $1,500 weekend. How much time could you have spent writing your next book for a permanent asset as opposed to that fleeting marketing opportunity? Some people do very well at it. I do not. I found the math for those kinds of things atrocious in my prior business life. If you're good at it, if you want to do it, do it. That stuff never worked for me. When I was out there doing that stuff, I was moving a $1,500 product. If you spend $1,500 and you move a $1,500 product at the end of the day, or two $750 products, you've paid your way for the show. If you have to sell books at a show that costs you $1,500 and you're making $2 a book, how many books do we have to sell at the show? 750. That's a lot of book sales we got to make. We have to be very careful with that kind of stuff. When you get your author stuff delivered, it's probably going to save you a lot of money to purchase in bulk until those stacks of books sit in your garage. So you can either commit money up front and suffer the risk that it does not move, or you can eliminate the risk and do the print on demand thing. I prefer to eliminate the risk, do the print on demand thing, and then if somebody really, really, really wants books, they can order them in bulk. That's a different aspect of the publishing. That's more for the business-oriented books that I work on. The most successful lesson learned from book launches for me, I had a banging cover that caught attention. It looked really good compared to a bunch of the other covers out there. But I had an excellent cover. I had beautiful artwork. I had a well-written story, like 4.2 after however many years it is. I think the worst review I got on the Guardsman was some guy who read the wrong book. He went back and edited his review because I said, I don't think there's any aliens in this book I wrote. He went back and made a review, something along the lines of, nobody should have this many 5 stars. And it's like, thanks, buddy. Anyway, anecdote aside, when you've got a beautiful cover, it's the first thing people see, naturally. Then you need to rely on your content. Your content drives your reviews. Good reviews, bad reviews are your life's blood. You get bad reviews because it's your first book, don't worry. You can pull the book down. You can go in and rewrite. You don't have to get upset over bad reviews. It's just a lesson learned. Let's go back over these comments about the things we need to do. How many books we need to publish before we actually make our first debut. The average author writes 3.24 books before successfully debuting. Chances are you need to write 4 books to get to the one worth debuting and publishing. That is a kick in the head, not to discourage. The reviews will let you know where we're on off the rails. If the reviews are bad, we take it down, we rewrite, we republish later. It's not hard, it's just lessons learned. The biggest lesson learned is have your infrastructure in place. A solid looking book on the cover will draw attention. A well-written book that people get into and comment positively about is going to pull in more sales. Once we start feeding the machine and introducing our friends, family, and fans, because we have people in our email lists, because we have people who actually in our community who we actually like, etc. That's how we start doing our successful launch. Look at the Andy Weirs of the world and how they were successful. I think the story to that was The Martian was written for like 6 years before it published, and he had something like 750,000 people on his email list, or some ridiculously large number. And then upon launch for his book, he was sending out tranches of 1,000 emails every couple hours. So people would open the emails, and throughout the day, they would be all over the world. People are buying this book. And that's how he wound up doing it. Because if you're sending out emails in chunks of 10,000 and 1 in 100 people is buying, you're getting 100 people an hour buying your book, which is going to catapult you into the stratosphere, especially if you can keep that up and get more and more people buying your book. You're going to rank number 1 automatically in the biggest categories. It's not impossible. It does take a little bit of patience. It does take persistence. The persistence is what we need to remember. This is not a sprint. We're not going to win with our first. Was it 85% of people take more than 4 years to make their first $100,000 publishing? And this is for people who are at the $100,000 threshold. There's a whole lot of people who never make it there. Making it to the $100,000 a year threshold is possible. Keeping it is a little bit difficult because we have to maintain, we have to do what we need to do. But consistent, successful book launches, once we've got the first couple out there, it's going to become easier and easier and easier, because there was also that statistic about our back catalog, that 67% of all the earnings are going to come from our back catalog. Our back catalog is books 1 and 2 when number 3 releases. The stronger our back catalog, the higher likelihood that we can reach that gold ring, $100,000 a year publishing piece. So lessons learned from book launches is pretty much a cut and dry thing. The first piece is the cover. The next piece is the quality of our content. And finally, it's how are we going to get people in to look at our books? Keeping in mind that I'm not a big social media guy. I'm barely competent with email. Social media, I run Snark. That's about the extent of my social media. When you're launching your book, you're going to be getting help from the machine. Just remember, the help is fleeting. At best, Amazon is a neutral entity. Most Amazon is neutral evil as far as like fantasy alignments fall, because it supports success. We drive success by bringing people into our orbit and introducing our relevant friends, family, and fans to the process. You do not want to have your Uncle Timmy and your cousin Harry and your Aunt Jane buying your books. Aunt Jane might like cookbooks, Uncle Harry might like, I don't know, woodworking, and then Timmy might be a science fiction comic book guy and you're writing romance. So just having family buying your stuff is going to pollute your data science. It's going to make a mess out of things. Up front, cover creation is your most important. The content, the quality of your work is the second most important piece. If your book is terrible, if you get low star reviews, let's rethink how we do things. We need to be patient, pull back, regroup, rework, and relaunch. Finally, the step that's going to sustain our book after the initial launch phase is how many people and how consistently we can drive traffic to our work. The Amazon machine supports success. When we're driving 10 people per day, Amazon might 10x that. And if we're selling our book and we're making $2 per book, and Amazon is moving 10 times the number of people that we are, and we're moving 10, that's 110 people per day buying the book at $2. Is a $200 day a good day? As far as book launches go, may all of your books soar. Be prepared to get the work in place first. I was an overnight success after 20 years of work. Enjoy your next book launch.